Hello, Tasshin.
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me, friend.
Hey, brother, I would say. Brother, friend. I know you say
Yeah.
friend, but to me, you're like brother Tasshin, you know?
Mm, I love both of them.
Yeah.
I tend to use friend more often because that's been my habit for longer from the Quakers, from the Society of Friends. But I do love brother and sister as well.
It also, there's an eerie thing I've listened to, like I told you, to some of your content to like get in the mood for this a little bit. And I've hung out a fair bit with Brent, and
Mm.
there's an eerie similarity between your the way you guys speak.
Definitely a brother for sure. Love Brent very much.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, friend. Yeah, I've heard Brent say that 100 times. That's very funny.
Yeah.
Uh, Great. Yeah. Um, let's see where we start with this. I have like the thing that I've observed about you a little bit is a very amazing uh, commitment to the bit, said with with a lot of love. Um, it's a funny thing, we are meeting through an online community of very much like-minded people. Um, let's say TPOT that are um, I don't know, curious how you would describe it, but that are kind of like very interested in many forms of well-being. Um, and then you are part of that, but then I was also very impressed by reading your website. You just kind of announced Tasshin Inc. as like a worldly organized manifestation of what you do and of your values. Um, you've got a well like oiled, it seems like, content distribution, and you're always wearing that thing.
The sash. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
sash. Yeah, so I know
That's right.
I'm like uh, I'm enjoying that very much, and yeah, I would love to know a lot about it. I have not done like very much in depth research, even though you have a lot of content out. So forgive me for that, but I just enjoy people retelling the story, from the now. The time is now, after all. So yeah, curious what you think about that.
Hmm. Mm. Is there a specific question there?
No, I mean, well, what is the specific question? Um, no, I'm really just curious what you think about it. It's like open
Hmm.
field. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
it's an observation. I can
Well,
give
one
you.
of the things
Yeah.
that comes to mind is what Teapot is. It's so funny. Just in the past few days, there's been a surge of people criticizing Teapot, and people have been using Blue Sky, this new app, and a lot of Teapot moved over there. And there's this article from this American fellow who I've known in multiple contexts, not personally, but I've known of him, Seth Abramson, where he wrote this article about how Teapot is like fascists on the internet and neo-reactionaries and post-rationalists, and it's like, oh no, they're invading Blue Sky, so Blue Sky will be bad. I was just like, wow,
Wow.
that's funny. Very different perception of what Teapot is than my own, at least. Um, my own is like really simple. It's just really simple. It's like people who want to be fully themselves in their life and on the internet. Typically, people who are pretty online, but the for me the point has always been be myself, and so uh, discover myself, express myself, explore who I want to be in the world, who I want to play with, how I want to play. Um, and I like that, and I'm going to keep doing that, regardless of what site we're on or what other people think of. I'm just going to keep doing my thing and be connected to the people I want to and play the games I want to, and I like it that way. So that's really how I think about it.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, like, yeah, isn't that obvious? Kind of like I mean, I don't know. Maybe when you're
Yeah.
from the outside, but that's a really weird like arc when Teapot becomes like a fascist
Yeah.
insurrection on the internet. It's like
On
no,
the
no,
internet. Oh no.
these are like the craziest, nicest. What did I read? Teapot is a group of people that have being misunderstood as a kink, which I thought was great. Just
Wow.
like because that reflects like this thing of being brutally honest and being so vulnerable and posting so much into the sphere, posting from the cocoon, kind of from the place of transformation, which is so hard when you're when you are I don't know, what did I mean by that? When you're like, when you don't have an identity, when you're changing, it can really be possible. I feel like I've seen 50 people on TPOT like going through identity shifts. Permanently, if you will, day to day, but also big ones. I mean, I know I have and I'm going through one. And it's it inspired me to know and to see people post from transformation, where you're like nothing and all you have is like a feeling here, a feeling there, you know?
Absolutely. I'm reminded of one of the classic like teapot goes rogue moments was Chow Chu's acid tweet from a couple years ago, where he talked about having written acid and how his mom gave him money and how he resented that. It was just like the perfect storm. And you know, I met QC in I think 2019 in person, and you know, I've met him multiple times in person over the years and been friends with him for several years. And it's like my experience reading that tweet, I think it was 2021, was like, oh yeah, that makes sense for QC. Like I could hear his voice saying it. Like I'd seen lots of his writing before. Like, oh, that makes sense. And just having sort of empathy and compassion for him. And then, you know, if you gave that to a random person and somewhere in the world, and they'd be like, what is this guy on about? You know, he's acid, money, resentment, mother. Like it's just as I say, a perfect storm of stuff. And I think like, I don't know, I really prioritize meeting people when possible, like having calls with them or ideally meeting them in person, because you can't have that kind of a reaction to someone you've met in person.
No.
Like you might disapprove of something, but you're like, this is a real person with a real life, a real situation. You know, they have a heart, they have feelings. Like you're just, a whole swath of moves are precluded of like basically being unkind or, you know, overly judgmental, because you're like, oh yeah, that's a real person with a real voice and a real life. And, you know, maybe you don't want to hang out with them or be best friends with them, but you extend them some kind of basic human dignity and respect. And that I think is probably a shared value in the community of like being kind and treating people with respect and dignity. And I think that's why it's so important to meet people in person and really get a sense of who they are. And then from there, that kind of expression is safe, where you're like, yeah, coming out of this cocoon, I love that image. And you're like, this is a mess right now. Like, I'm showing you my mess. Can you see my mess? Can you help me through my mess? Because that's so powerful for that transformation process. And I think a big part of why the people in the scene are so like agentic, you know, they're so fucking badass. All the people, they're like, we're doing really cool things. They're really pushing the edge of culture and what's possible for a human in this time. And like everyone's doing something cool. And it's because that kind of internal transformation is valued and seen as safe. And people aren't just like, I don't know, criticizing that kind of transformation from a place of habitual judgment. They're like, oh yeah, I see you. You're going through something. Like there's a real gem and a jewel here. And we're not just going to be habitually judgmental or cruel like is the default on the internet in so many places.
Yeah. Yeah, I came to find Teapot at the end of 2020. I was going through a heart-wrenching breakup. It was really, really bad. And it was and then I was reading Twitter like manically, very much like QC said in your last episode together. This I experienced this thing during the year after 21, where I was on Twitter a lot, where you're just scrolling but you're looking for something. So you could either say, oh, I'm procrastinating, how annoying, or like you're doing this kind thing to yourself and you're like, oh look, he's looking for something again. And I had that today actually. I was like, and then something pops up and it's like, wow, okay, that's what I was looking for. And that was like before I even had been in contact with myself about this phenomenon. I was like on Twitter, and then I hear somebody talks about Rome, you know, and I'm like, that's interesting. And then I find Visa, right? And I'm like, holy shit. And I like click through Visapedia, you know, his web of threads kind of. And I'm like, no way, this dude is doing that. That's like unbelievable. And the kind of this real, yeah, this spot in the middle between idea and fully fledged thought slash between caterpillar and butterfly, the cocoon, this process of putting the process into words. I was like, holy shit, I love that. And then also this kind of sense of people who are young, wild, and free, lol, that are, I don't know, got minted through a job or, you know, parental guidance or even not, but like kind of are on this uncompromising journey to being yourself, being themselves. I was like, oh, I thought only I was doing that. That was right. Like I didn't have the people. So, yeah, I was responding to something you said, but yeah, for me that was really an unbelievable blessing to see that. It was such a yeah, because you were talking about people knowing each other there and people kind of showing like the public graph as opposed to like a private graph like Facebook, but like the public graph as a place for friendship and being like courageous. I think there's so much courage there. Being courageous to make friends in public and stuff and to like reach out and be like, hey, do you want to, you know, I don't
Totally.
know, so much amazing stuff that's really, really, like you said, pushing the frontier. And I had such a feeling of, holy crap, I'm in the right place here. What's going on? What is this?
Mm. 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 It's the best feeling. I don't know, to be pushing your own edges and be doing it with other people who are pushing their own edges. And there starts to be this real momentum as a group where someone can just say something that's so powerful for you and it's an aside for them and then you're like, what? And it
Yeah.
refactors how you see things and how you act. And, you know, you actually had one of these tweets for me where I loved it. There've been a couple of these tweets that have had this energy from you for me, but one of them was the one about, you know, can we please just start acting as if God is on your side? And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, thank you, brother. Like,
Yeah.
all right, I'll just, duh. I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but yeah, of course. Like, I don't know. It's not really, I mean, I would be very curious to know what you meant by that. But like, to me, the energy of it was what was important of like, I don't know, sometimes I find theistic, you know, ways of seeing useful and inspiring like a lot of the time, but it's not like a primary mode for me. And it's just, but it's more the energy of like, yeah, the universe, God, all beings, the field, whatever you want to call it, like wants to see this thing happen. Like you're in alignment with it. Can you just please start acting like it's
Yeah.
all on your side? Like just trust, man. Just trust. It's such a good energy and really what I need to hear. And it's been there for me since I've seen it, you know, whatever, a few weeks ago. In really key moments, like, oh, like this seems like a problem now, but like probably it's for the best. And can you please just act like God is on your side? It's like, oh hell yeah. And like, you know, what is that, like 9, 10, 12 words or something? Like I haven't counted it, but like a small number of words.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much 11, 12. I think it was, could you please start acting like God is in your corner? Question mark.
There we go. There we go. So it's like that is enough of a packet of information that's just like rearranging your whole orientation towards life. And we're all doing that for each other all the time. And no wonder it's this like compounding, you know, roller coaster steam engine of internal transformation and external manifestation, you know?
Yeah, unbelievable, man. Yeah, it's very funny. This is so, I mean, it's obviously such a joy, right, to have an impact like that and to bless you. Many blessings upon you.
Thank you. It's allergy season here.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Here as well. It's starting up. Yeah, it's such a blessing, haha, to to have this impact, and it's actually the second time. Positive Loop. I don't know if you know this guy, one of the Berlin people here. Almost difficult not to say his first name, which isn't so public, but because I know him as a friend. tweeted at me today, and I had this other meme, which was the 3 tasks of a wizard, which is tend to the goats, like eat and feed yourself and keep your house in order, practice the craft, and heed the call. You know, it was kind of, and I made that up when he was in the room. I think we were talking about something, and I was like, you know, like he was like, maybe I'm a wizard too, you know, and I'm like, yeah, pretty sure you are. So I have this wizard meme a little bit. So he tweeted at me today and was like, hey, you might get a kick out of it. But the tending to the goats, you know, as kind of basic survival, being good and part of the job, is firmly stuck with me as like a truism, you know. And I'm like, oh, great. And now you're like, yeah, that hit you. That's nice. And yeah, what did I mean by that? Yeah, I think it's probably I think you probably know better what I meant than me. That's the funny thing, right? Because for you, it has like, as you said, it's really been with you. For me, it was like you said, kind of an aside. I think a bit. Sometimes I really enjoy the way Mage posts. He has this kind of very abrasive, like scolding teaching voice sometimes, which I find very funny. Inside of the world of people sometimes being very nice, you know. And so for me that was like something like that. Oh, could you please just, but also of course to myself, as always, note to self, and just like you know, just have, for me, have faith is just always such an important thing, you know. Be brave, have faith. Yeah, especially, and I'm sure we can talk about this more when you have, I mean, you know this, you have thought about the things you do probably a million times now, and you have thought about them so much that you have a website that says pretty precisely what you're trying to do. You don't have vague ideas, but you actually know. And so I think that's a good prerequisite to think about something like a million times to make sure that it's properly shaved down. From that point on, I think it's very good to have cultivated a sense of faith in that process, so that, you know, I've been procrastinating uploading the previous podcast episode of this that I did with Anansi. I published it just before we're recording this, you know, like kind of a week later. And I went to myself and I was kind of like, hey, come on, man, just do it, you know, like, you know, this is the right thing. I walked through my hallway. I said this to myself today. It's like, why you, you know, I wasn't so compassionate with myself. I was like, now, come on, now do it, right? Otherwise it's going to really be too late. You know that there's no question about this. We've already decided a long time ago. And then that's kind of like that energy. Could you please start acting like everything's all right? God is in your corner, you know? You're doing the right thing. You've done the due diligence, kind of like that, you know?
I could imagine people like that tweet really just hit me in exactly the right place and just landed for me in such a good way. And I could imagine other responses of like, well, on the one hand, there's just an almost like, to me, boring response of like, well, I don't believe in God, you know. It's like, well, that's not the point of that tweet, really. Like, that's not really the point to me.
No,
it's boring, you know. It's not I don't know. Like I remember all of a sudden I read several like ontological arguments for the existence of God, and it was like very impressive because they're like logically like, wow, you really worked something out there. And it's like, this isn't satisfying, you know. It's not satisfying. It's just like either God is or isn't, and a logical argument I don't feel like would convince the same person that God exists. It's just like faith would, you know. It's like either you have faith or you don't, and if you don't, that's fine, but that it's beside the point. And anyway, that's how I see it anyway. But I could imagine a different response where someone's like, well, should God be on my side? And, you know, like, is that a good thing? And who am I to have God on my side? And that's trickier, but I think that's worth sitting with if that came up for someone. Like, I think this is a little bit of my own like harsh voice coming out, but like, I feel like people should live a life that they're proud of. And if you're not proud of your life, like that's good information. Like definitely listen to that and sit with that. Like why am I not proud of my life? And how can I make a change so that I am proud of who I am and what I'm doing and then do that. And I think that's really it's not easy, but that is possible for everyone. Like you are alive so that you can live a life that you're proud of. And if you notice that you're not, that's exceedingly uncomfortable, but you have to sit with that and work through that. And I could see that coming up for in response to that tweet. And then for me, I'm really proud of the life that I'm living and what I'm doing with my time. And I think I'm doing something good for me and for other people and for the world. And so it's like, of course, God would be on my side. Like, duh, I'd be in my corner. You know, it's like, okay, I should start acting that way. Like, thank you, Simon. Like, helpful feedback there, brother. So you know, that I could imagine there's other responses, but I think it's worth sitting with that if you're like, oh God, why me, you know, or something.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Lots to that. I'm gonna ask you something, which is what I just got curious about. You said you know QC since 2018 or something.
2019 is when I
Or
first met him.
19.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how was like? Can you tell me a tale, as my elder when it comes to Teapot, a tale of how you experienced kind of the development of it? Let's say pre-December 2020, because from there I was kind of like clued in, and I'm curious what happened before that.
Well, everyone has their own origin stories, and I've only seen my own fraction of it. I think the thing that makes sense for me to begin with is like I created an account in I guess it was 2007 or 2008 or something. The account that I used existed then, and it was like whatever six. I don't know the exact date that I created or the date that Twitter started, but it was like within a year that Twitter started or so. And I remember the advertising at the time was like a lot of it had that like weird color scheme from way back when, and there was like the fail whale, and like it was supposed to be on those like SMS phones and stuff like that, and Blackberries, and like the idea was like status updates. It's like I just got pizza, or like just saw my friend and had a drink, and people still post like that sometimes, but that's a minority of posts, I'd say. And I think that's how I posted. I posted like that for the first like 6-7 years of my account, and it's kind of sweet actually. I know it's like I went to college. It was like the end of my high school. I went to college. I started even after that was like posting a little bit, and there's like I don't know something like 100 200 tweets a year that are like kind of like little journal entries from my life way back when, and kind of sweet to see that. And sometimes I'll go back and interact with those tweets and like basically send myself meta from the future. And but like that's what I'm trying to get at is I think Twitter itself and everyone who was using it like kind of didn't really know what it was for, and they're just like, we made a thing and this seems like it might be cool, but like I guess the thing to do is post status updates and I don't know, try it out or something was kind of the attitude from Twitter, is like, we made a thing, try it. And I think it took a long time for the world to figure out what Twitter was for and what it's possible with it. Which I don't know, I essentially think of it as like a global consciousness engine right now. It's like a public way that everyone can play together on the internet, and then emergent phenomena happen if you play at that scale. And that's a really different orientation than like just got pizza, like whatever. And it took me a while to figure that out. I think
Today, sorry, bro. Today it's something like just got pizza. I finally learned to be kind to myself. It's like the same. It's like a very fundamental connotation. No, I don't know. Just a little bit.
Yeah, I think historically, let's see. I trained at the monastery I trained at from 2015 to 2017. I left for about a year. I was tweeting during that time. And then when I left, and then I took just for me in my own life, I took building a second brain. I think the fourth cohort of it with Tiago in late December of 2017 when I was out at the monastery for about a year. And that was really when things changed for me. I'd say I had been posting more heavily before that, but like because I was not at the monastery and because I took that cohort, I was just like tweeting a lot, and there were most of the people in the cohort were also tweeting, and I met I was interacting with Tiago a fair bit and some other folks, and James Stuber, who's still in Teapot. He and I kind of got connected then, and that was when. And actually, Venkatesh Rao was a big influence on Tiago as well. So I don't think I interacted with him around then, although I did later. But Ribbon Farm was definitely in the like DNA of whatever this neck of the woods became. And I was never a rationalist, but I've been, as they say, rationalist adjacent for a long time, and there were certainly rats in the area. I think in 2018, I took Bodhisattva vows, and I went back to the monastery, and that was when it started for me becoming something like Teapot. I remember following Visa in late 2018. I think he probably had like 800, 1,000 followers at the time, but it was clear something was different about him. And I think at that point it just started compounding, where it was like started to be a scene, and that was my experience of it, at least, where it was like more and more of the same kinds of people interacting in the same kinds of ways with each other, of like being public and vulnerable and like threading and kind of game playing orientation, rather than even up until 2016, 2017, there was a lot of like the mindset was kind of like, oh, the thing to do with Twitter is to like shill. You could say like, oh, I have this thing and I want people to see it and participate and buy it, or it's to make money. And that's just, I almost have like an ick reaction to that now, of like, that's fine, you can sell your thing, but like if that's the only thing you're doing on the internet, like, it's just boring to me. But I think that's kind of how it shaped up, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I could kind of infer back. I really like these histories, I have a bit of a documentarian part of myself, and that's actually very interesting. I'm really glad I asked you, because I find it very funny that you've been tweeting more or less since 2007. That's crazy. I mean, I made my big account in 2009 or 10, which was because I was in esports at the time, right? I was a StarCraft commentator, and I later worked at Twitch. And so in gaming and esports, especially esports, Twitter was well established as a communication tool, and kind of in a similar way, a little bit more status oriented, more oriented towards, who knows who, and what happened, and we were at this crazy place with at A, at B, at C, right? Kind of this but very much in the same vein that we know it, forming a shared reality, forming a web, forming a community of people interacting, which was cool. I really enjoyed that. And then I've I think I use Twitter a lot for my own kind of education, and you can read all sorts of takes, and I've had my darker years where I was very confused about many things. So I've gone through also I've used it pretty well to to kind of map out extremism, I think, like kind of researching the corners in myself and the reflection of that in the world, of extreme left, extreme right, kind of manosphere, kind of like more unseemly corners where I've seen a lot of like shilling, right, there as well. And then, but none of that. And I always felt like there was a lot of, it was never kosher to interact there. It was very obvious to me that I would lurk there, right? That there was clear that there was also, it's a darker corner. And then I found it very funny. Maybe that's an interesting strand of conversation, that a key moment for you was building a second brain, which is like you said, this course, right? That most people that would listen to this know, by Tiago Forte. And like I told you, for me, it was also a mention of Rome, the knowledge graph, where I was like, what is that? That seems like something I need, because my head was so full at the time. And I had a real problem of wanting to do something but not feeling like I could put my horsepower on the street or something. And then from there, Visa, and then very quickly kind of this very wholesome place where I was like also lurking, but then I was like, no, I want to be part of this for the first time in a while, right? Feeling like my being reaching out, like, no. And I'm used to being part of internet communities through metal, through gaming, through everything. But that was like, holy shit, that's something different here, you know? And then, but I think it's amazing that you've been like posting OA kind of since 2007. Like that's something different. Then I'm like, okay, because this kind of, because in a way I'm getting pizza. That's the joke from earlier. Is like the same, the OG. That's so, isn't that funny? That's like the OG Twitter energy, right? Like what Teapot people are doing now is like a very innocent. This is what's going on with me on like a hella deep level now, but how nice.
Totally. Yeah. There's a really great reply that Visa has to, I think it's to Sonia, where he says like one day historians will write about how everyone has overlapping histories in this part of Twitter, and I forget exactly how he phrases it, but like overlapping origin stories. And I think there's a lot of from like sort of a historical documentary social anthropology perspective, there's a lot of like precursors to the thing, like the sort of PKM stuff and personal knowledge management, and I think like the rationalists and Ribbon Farm and the like, I don't know, part of, I think for myself, I've lived in the Bay Area off and on for the last for several years, where I was like going between Vermont and the Bay Area for several years, and like I got to meet a lot of people in the Bay Area, and that was definitely a locus of things. And there are people that are like, actually, like Kersey, for example, we mentioned, like Kersey and I met each other in the fall of 2018 in a totally different context, and then we actually like kind of had similar arcs actually. And when I left the monastery, he was kind of going into a sort of poster arc himself, and so we're like, oh, let's like catch up, and then we made some collaborations and have been friends since. And there's a number of people who I knew before they had a Twitter arc, or like later joined, like and I think that's the case for a lot of people, where there's like they're kind of pulling in people from their life, and that are agentic, or pushing the edge of things. And when you find that, like if you're at that place in your life, it's really powerful to just find a community of people who are like having the same, caring about the same virtues that you are, and same values, and pushing themselves, and growing internally, and then seeing what comes out of that. And it's that's a different, the energy of Teapot does feel different to me than any community that I've been part of. Like I've been part of a lot of communities as well, and they're all typically like topic focused, like there's various topics I've gotten interested in over the years, and Teapot resists that. Like people are interested in their things, but like if you pick any given person, I'm interested in some of the things they're interested in, and not interested in some of the things, and it doesn't matter. It's more about how you're showing up to your life that I think is the commonality.
Yeah, it's being focused was immediately the word that came to mind. And for me, that's
Totally.
so cool, because I've always, I left Twitch and I knew I was gonna podcast, because I love people and I love interviewing and I love the art of conversation. But at the time, the only thing that I had in front of me was my German Twitch streamer gamer community, where I felt like, okay, there could be something there, but I had to go through a big ass cocoon, to like interface with my being and faith and so on. I would have. And so topics can really be quite identity bringing thing that can also trap you pretty hard. So, and I love that. I love this sense of infinity in the topic of being. If your focal point is change or being or whatever else the third thing in that list is, then it will never get boring. Right?
I'm reminded of I was at the monastery that I trained at for about 5 years, and it was really hard to decide to leave again. I left twice, and I had struggled with that decision for like 8 months, and I would just go back and forth every day, like, oh, I should stay, oh, I should go. And um, in retrospect, I get this image of like a box, and there was just like this like explosive energy in the box that was wanting to come out, and it just could not fit in that box. And like that had been a good box for me in my 20s, and it just like who I wanted to be was much bigger than the way I could fit in there. And I see that exploding out now in the way that I show up to my life, where like I'm not just doing one thing, there's not just the one thing that I'm focusing everything on. It's like I'm doing all of the things, and I'm making art, and I'm doing this project and this podcast and this blog post and this book and that novel and collaborating with this person. That just feels so much more expansive and full and fluid and alive than, I am this person in this container and I will do this thing, which was that was good. I think that was good for me in my 20s, but I needed something more eventually. And it's been fascinating just to watch that energy explode into just so many directions and things I never expected myself to do. And I love seeing that unfold for other people as well.
Mm, mm, mm. So how/why did you become a monk? That's kind of my original thing with I think that maybe there's a bit of the commitment to the bit, right? You have that thing that you bring with you, the sash in a way, and whatever belongs to it. So I would be curious about that.
Yeah, I started meditating in college and got pretty interested in it. That was like the topic I was interested in for a while, was meditation, and meditation practically, and then sort of intellectually mysticism. I was reading quite a bit in my education, and I was started to be dissatisfied with the fact that all of the philosophers disagreed with each other and just saw the world so differently. And then when I started to realize that mysticism was the thing, I was like, oh, they're all saying the same thing and pointing to the same thing. And of course, they're from different cultures and they have different practices, but like they're saying there's some kind of transcendent, supra-rational truth that is possible to directly access, and that it's like good. You should do that. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try to do that. And meditation seemed like a good way to do it. And I meditated for half an hour a day throughout my college experience, and it was just brutal. It was awful. It was terrible. I hated it.
Great.
I was
top hobby, bro. Good job.
What's that?
Top hobby, I said. Great hobby. Like,
yeah.
Great primary source of interest that you hate. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, there was a lot of like coercion and forcing. I was like, oh, I think this is the thing I should do. Yeah. And I would just sit there and try to follow my breath. And I think what would happen would be I would get distracted very quickly, and then I would be frustrated that I was distracted, which would lead to more distraction, and I would be in physical discomfort. And, I was trying to figure out how to walk a spiritual path on my own, and it didn't work. So eventually I took the feedback and was like, I need a teacher, I need a community, I need some teachings to follow. Like, I can't do this, I can't reinvent the wheel by myself here. And from that perspective, a monastery started to look very attractive. It was like, that's where you go to do that. And I wanted to be in a container that would hold me and support me, rather than me trying to do it all by myself and figure it out by myself. And that was my main intent, was basically like, go get enlightened and train in a monastery until that happens. Yeah, let's figure it out from there. So anyway, it worked out differently than that, of course, but that was why I joined originally, was to go deeper into my meditation practice.
Did you grow up in like a certain way? And I'm asking from a point of the people that I know, or I think there are also a lot from in TPOT, that are going on a spiritual journey, or also the other thing that you described before we went to this question, which is kind of breaking the mold of the singular identity, becoming a multifaceted being, beginning to live life as an artist, or beginning to approach life as art, essentially, right? And then from there comes kind of like this focus on art, creativity, and faith. Usually, that's my experience. And then you're like a wizard, right? And you're doing like the whole thing. You're working with your whole being. That's kind of that ADHD wizard, late onset artist meme. The tweet that you guys referenced, you and QC referenced. That for me, that's all one thing. I'm always curious why people go on this agency / magic / surrender / spiritual journey. And my personal experience is that, you know, either there's like a big ass thing inside you that needs out, or, you know, or you grow up with something missing, or both, or maybe that has something to do with each other. Curious how you see that.
Well, I grew up Unitarian Universalist. Which
You grew up
interesting.
Sorry, what?
Unitarian Universalist.
I really don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's a Christian, nominally Christian denomination from mostly, I believe, the northeast of America. That it was originally two separate movements, Unitarianism and Universalism, and then eventually they merged. Practically these days, it's like essentially a very liberal community of it's nominally connected to Christianity, but I think most people aren't Christians. I think most Christians would be like, that's not Christianity. It's like there's a lot of focus on individualism, people finding their own path and trusting their own wisdom, and you know, there's, you know, people from every religious tradition that are in the UU Church, you know, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Catholics, you know, people who are atheists, certainly, agnostics, everybody. And it's just a lot of focus on like kindness and, you know, like community. It sort of like has the trappings of a church, a Christian church, but without a very heavy theology, basically. And so, you know, you meet on Sundays, there's like a sermon, you know, you have a coffee hour, that kind of thing. But it's not very heavy on the religion. It's more about values of like kindness and, you know, things like that. So that was good for me as a kid. And I think I for some reason that's not completely obvious to me, in my teenage years, I became a very intense atheist. Like I was angry at religion and the idea of God, even though I had not been, it wasn't like I was like a Catholic and then became an atheist or something. It was like I was a Unitarian Universalist and then I became a really hardcore atheist. I don't know, maybe it's just a rebellious period where you're like becoming yourself and you need something to rebel against. I don't know, but yeah. And then when I learned about mysticism in college, that was something that was really missing for me from the UU Church. They don't really have a mystical core. They don't really have spiritual practices that are contemplative in nature that lead to, you know, spiritual transformation. Individual practitioners in the UU Church have that, certainly, but it's not in the collective waters or in the infrastructure to like, oh, you know, like we meditate every day, or, you know, do zazen, or, you know, pray or something, chant, whatever. It's not like that. So I really needed that and was craving that and yearning for that, and ended up turning to Buddhism for that, and was really I don't really exactly think of myself as a Buddhist now. I'm just kind of doing my own thing, and there's been so many diverse influences that are outside of Buddhism, but it certainly became a kind of spiritual home base for me in my 20s.
Got you. So a bit of well, first of all, a little comment. I didn't know that there was such a thing as like universalism as like a movement, or like a, how would you call it, type of faith or practice or something. In German you would say stream, like Strömung. It's very funny. I call myself a universalist sometimes in my own like exploration of like, I like things that are like somewhat universally true, which is pretty much what you described with the thing that all philosophers pointed to but couldn't get to, right? You were like, they're pointing to universal thing, you know, like, and that has interested me from pretty early, because I was trying to solve problems, I think, and I was like, well, what's true in as many cases as possible.
Mm.
Then then there are like, yeah, very many interesting things you can follow. So that's funny to me that that's a thing that isn't that really, or maybe I might read up on that. And so, okay, so you had a religious kind of aversion and rediscovery, understandable. I also had, of course, an atheistic. I grew up pretty like Protestant, like with a very cute. I really enjoy my grandparents' faith now. It's like very sweet, very also very like people oriented, and very much do your own thing, and comes from a very unusual place, I think, which is great. And I turned also to heavy metal, and then the atheism just comes with it. Or it's like, yeah, it's like the aversion to theism, right? It's like you still know daddy is there, but you say fuck you, dad. You know, it's like Slayer, God hates us off. You know, there's
Wow.
this very heavy metal is very religious. It's just whatever you say, I'm gonna say the opposite. Screw you guys. Yeah, very funny. But what about the kind of this broadness, this agency, this magic, this having the audacity, bro, to form Tasshin Inc. You know, just as a little. I know you're it's winky faced, but yeah, curious about that because I think that's so interesting. This bigness.
Like, how did I come to form that group?
No, why do you need to do that? You know, what's driving you? What's in you? What compels you to go on this big journey? That's a big thing, you know.
One of the ideas that came to me from my teacher at the monastery was he called it a vow, which is an English translation or paraphrase of a word that you can trace through Mahayana Buddhism's history. Mahayana Buddhism being sort of the second wave of Buddhism, Theravadan Buddhism being kind of in a hand wavy way the first wave of Buddhism. It's actually a little more complicated than that, but this tracks something like the idea of a life purpose. It's a little bit different theologically, I guess you could say, or ontologically than at least the way a life purpose I had heard, sort of a straw version of a life purpose that I'd heard. But in any case, that was an idea that was really in the waters at Maple, the monastic academy where I trained, and really made an impact on me. The way that he would talk about it is that your vow is, and I'm paraphrasing here, but at the intersection of your own desires and what the world needs. It's like not just what the world needs. It's not just what you want. It's where those things meet. And he never used this word to describe it that I recall, but it became clear to me that that's kind of an emergent property. It's not something that's predetermined. In that was kind of the sense that I got from a life purpose, at least, is like you either do it or you don't, and check the box or you don't, and you succeed or you fail. It's a pass fail course or something. It's like it's not really like that. Over the last couple of years, it seems like I've found my life's work, my vow, in a certain way. I think that I have found a concept or conceptual framing for my life's work that feels resonant at this time, but your life's work or your vow is not actually a concept. So a concept is just kind of, it's a map of the territory, right? And so the map is not the territory, but it's helpful to have a map of the territory. So the territory might change. I might need to update my map, but like I have a pretty good map that seems to work well for me, that feels resonant and inspiring. And that's basically these three things, what I call love, curiosity, and empowerment. And it took me a little while to find that, but I'm like, oh, yep, that's it. That's the thing. And at least for now, and it seems like the direction to go in. And I started to think about what I call service project throughput. And this is based on an idea from strategy or manufacturing in particular, but it's like any system has something it's trying to create, and then there's a rate at which it creates that thing, right? And so for me, I'm trying to create service projects, ideally like fun service projects. That's what I'm trying to do. Maximize fun and service in my life. And I don't want to just do things that are of benefit. I don't want to do just things that are fun. I want to do both of them. I want to optimize for both of those variables. Um, and then I want to optimize the rate at which I'm completing these projects that are fun and beneficial. And to do that, it helps to have people around and systems and infrastructure and organizations and I don't know boring things like standard operating procedures and meetings and hierarchy and roles to do that. It's like I know how those things work practically. I learned a lot about how nonprofit organizations worked from training at the monastery, and because there was also like leadership training there in addition to like contemplative practice and monastic training. And yeah, it seemed to make sense to I was hitting the limit of what I could do by myself, and I wanted to have basically both more fun and more benefit in the world. And started to, there were a lot of collaborations with different people I had started to create, and then there's momentum of like, oh, it makes sense to have these not just be like one-off collaborations or one-time projects, but actually like recurring, ongoing roles that are happening in specific what I call departments of the sort of organization that I'm building. It's still really early days of this thing. It's not a company. It's not a nonprofit. It's kind of an informal working collective, and informal agreements between friends. But so far so good, and really feel blessed to be working with those people, and I'm excited about the projects that we're doing.
Dope. Dope. Yeah, I really get that. Funny. Yeah. Yeah, so pragmatism and faith is a funny one. I really enjoy that. That's kind of like the if we play our cards right, we might just get this damn thing to a golden age, let's just do that kind of thing. And yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so I think my question was pointing at this life purpose thing. It kind of like I think in your conversation with QC, which is still very alive for me, you guys call it devotion. You're like old enough to devote yourself to something. And then you can do that, and then you've done that thing for a bit, but yeah, that was my question. It's like, okay, so you're actually, maybe that's it, you're actually interested in living with purpose, because I think purpose was kind of the key word that drove me as well after Twitch in 2018, and kind of I really kind of broke my head over, okay, but what's my purpose, right? And you kind of get these approximations. How did you narrow it down to these things? I think I know the answer, but just in case anybody is trying to do that at the moment, because I think many people are trying to do that. I actually, to be perfectly honest, I'm working on writing a website now, and I think putting things together, like I know I've got this point of devotion and kind of knowing what I'm doing, but even just finding the words I think is pretty hard. So then let me make it personal, and then I'll take the advice personally as well.
Well, I'm curious about what it is that you're devoting yourself to. You can say something about that now or later, or not at all, but hearing you talk about it has me curious.
Yeah, sure. I'll take the question then. Let me see. One disadvantage of not having it perfectly written down in like a central point of truth is that I'm like, now I try to like tap into that stream, and like I'm gonna come up with something now. That's one of the advantages why I really want to have it written down, so that I can just know it, say it, even though it's not that's the pragmatic side of it, right? For me, a lot of it has to do with talking and listening, very de facto, like very much what we're doing right now. That's very close to my primary thing that I want to do. One of the things that I had to come to terms with is a desire that I have for showmanship, actually, which I often have, which I had a lot of internal arguments about when it comes to kind of like narcissism and, image before substance and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, but I think one thing that has always come back to me is like, oh, but I'm made for the stage, right? I played in a band as a youngster. I always enjoyed being part of the Twitch and esports high society when I was there. And okay, so well, that's a part of me that wants that. So how can I do that? And so to have a show, that's good for me. Part of this whole concept for me is like what's easy to do, because I don't know, like many kind of ADHD adjacent kids, it's just impossible for me to do things that aren't like very enjoyable or like very gratifying or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I always try to mix kind of great gratification with things that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we talk and I'm having a great time, which I am, like, for example, for me, I already have so many hilarious moments, like you saying that one day historians will come and map out the scene as the two of us as historians are mapping out the scene. I'm like, great, right? We're already doing something that's very funny. Somebody has predicted this. This is great. We're in the stream of things. So that's one thing. So I think I can just interview my way through everything. That's I think what I'm feeling. Another thing is paying it forward. I spent a lot of paying it backwards. How do you say that? Giving back or something. I've spent a lot of time going from I work in tech and I have like the best job in the world because I'm working at Twitch with video games, blah, blah, blah. But there is something more, my soul is knocking on my door somehow. What can I do? Am I stupid? Am I like, I'm forfeiting so much money if I leave here now, blah, blah, blah. To, okay, I'm actually doing it. I want to become an artist, AKA approach life as art, make stuff. And then again, see what I can make from my deepest being. That's gratifying, that's fun. And that's, like you said, helpful, And so just to access that, I've done a lot of gymnastics, like, and on that, and I'm still pushing it with some friends of mine. I also have a bit of a crew, Louis, Paul, and Zebi. And we are like all kind of in various ways pushing through obstacle towards this very uncompromising life as an artist and as a creative being. I really want to help a lot of people do that, and overcome the difficulties of that, societal, faith, practical, and then of course the big part, which is like the general introspection and talking to yourself, which I think is somewhat in the realm of the esoteric, but is like super practical. And my brain is going wild because there are so many points to that, right? Kind of like I was very close to asking you, why was it relevant to you to do building a second brain, right? You were a monk at the time, right? How does that fit together? Well, you're more than just a monk. That was the point of it, right? But okay, so that's essentially for me, that's talking to yourself. I mean, to me, I have a notion, that's where I talk to myself. And then this kindness element, that's very important. As you can see, I have not written this down, so it's not very concise, but in this realm is basically going to be my work. And I think one of the things that I'm working towards doing now is also consulting companies on being, I guess, more introspective, kinder, more sustainable in there. A big thing that I have is around seasons and natural creativity, I like to call it, natural cycles, following what's easy, following what's possible. I think a lot of Nibras tweeted that when you drink a lot of coffee and you do work, your work is coffee shaped. I think a lot of work is not just coffee shaped, that too, but also kind of like self-hatred shaped or something. Or like coercion shaped. It would be really nice if many things, right? We can have the greatest things in the world. It would be so nice if they were like love shaped. That would be dope. Self-love shaped, or love and self-love is the same thing, right? You're just, about this. You're the love pilgrim. So yeah, I think that's good. That's my work, roughly speaking.
It's really helpful to talk about it a lot, talk to a lot of people about it.
Yeah.
I think that's and journal about it, introspect about it. You start to notice themes and patterns, and that's how it kind of comes out. So it's a privilege to hear a little bit about how you're seeing it now, and I look forward to seeing that evolve.
Yeah. And you would say you've also you've written so much that it just came out at some point, or you've just noodled so much?
Well, it's helpful to assume that there is such a thing. There's something that wants to arise from your life, something that wants to emerge, and then you're just looking for it in the same way that I don't know. I misplace. I wear glasses, but I don't like to wear them. So I put them down in weird places sometimes, and ideally I'd be more mindful and know where I put them. I'm still working on that, but if I put them down somewhere and I can't find them, well, that's always hard because I don't have my glasses on. It's helpful to have glasses on to find things, but you just know they're somewhere. It's like, oh, I put them here somewhere, and just where are they? And that's a different thing than like, is there something in the room, right? So you have to assume that there is such a thing. I'm almost like I'm here to do something. I came here to do something. What is it? And then you're looking for it rather than, you're not making it up. You're not fabricating it. There is play and dance, and you have input and say in it, but it's not fabricated out of thin air or whole cloth or whatever. You're dancing with the universe to make it and to find it and let it arise. And so I wouldn't say there was one moment where I found it. I think it's a continual process. Even now that I have this, as I say, it's a conceptual map of the territory, but the territory itself is not concept. So, I anticipate it evolving and changing over time as the world changes, as I change. But I think it came to me in stages. Each of the love, curiosity, and empowerment pieces came to me in stages, and I could get into what those stages were, but it came over period of month, about a year probably, and there's a feeling of like, yes, that's it, when the empowerment kind of clicked into place, and then it was like, okay, now that I know this, I'm going to double down, and this is what I'm doing. And then since then I've talked to people a lot about it and sort of clarified how I think about it and how I talk about it and what projects I do specifically and who I'm working with and how we work and that sort of thing. But that's coming from a place of clarity about what it is and what I'm focusing on. It's like, now that I know, I can double down, and make sense to take a lot of, make big plays and invest time and energy and resources into it in various ways.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, two things to summarize for me. One is to know that it's there. I think that's part of what I mentioned, right? That took me a while. Like, there are hundreds of millions of people, I would guess, that that don't know that the glasses are there, right? That are like working from some sort of deficit if we consider, well, if we say this is a good thing, right? Like, I don't, no hate, right? Like, many people are doing many great things without knowing that the glasses are there. They just do it intuitively or something. The glasses is a nice metaphor. And then, but many people are in pain and are confused, and it would help them a lot that there are glasses there, because they're like walking around all the time and scrunching, and they're like, I can't look so well, and something seems off. But it's hard for many people, I think, to believe that the glasses are there, that there's a purpose, that there's something that helps you see very clearly, right? That's the transcendent object, the glasses. You're suddenly beyond money in a way. You're beyond. It has the potential, at least, to get you beyond your personal interest. Yeah, and I think that's one important thing. Without that, you can't do anything. And then, if you believe they are there, because while you haven't found them, you can only believe. Maybe even better to know. At some point, maybe then you will find out at some point. Maybe you'll find them, and then then you see clearly, right? Then you know what it is. And you can only do that by, I guess, does the metaphor hold? By finding the glasses, and then you put them on, and then you see clearly, and then you kind of know what your job is. For me, that also now came with some pressure. Kind of, I've been on a 4-year sabbatical. I've had that Twitch/Amazon money that helped me set myself free from society a little bit. But now that the number go down a little bit, it's like I'm very grateful for that pressure, because I feel the need to, from my hermit mountain, kind of where I'm like away from everything, very notably, to walk back into the village, because I need to do some trading, right? And I've got something up there. I'm coming back now. But I can't come back with empty hands. I better think about what I'm bringing, right? So like, let me collect like these stones and maybe these leaves, and let me like say that this does X and this does Y, and I'll see how it sells, kind of. Can I get some eggs for that? Can a man get some eggs for that? And that's the clarity of having the glasses on. I think it's like, okay, I've got something. And I mean, this is a years long process. I'm sure it was for you. It was certainly for me. And I think you can also do it even if you're not. Can I ask you about money? Can I ask you how you,
Sure.
Yeah, you went through this whole process? Did you have money? Did you make money? Did you sustain yourself in a way that is not so money focused? How did you, I feel like many people would say as a counter argument, kind of like, yeah, but I can't think about that. I've got 2 kids and 2 jobs or something. What do you say? Because it needs space, this contemplation. It's all about space. And money gives space. So I'm curious how you could contemplate that like that.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. It occurs to me from your story that it seems to me like there are 2. This is just how it's occurring to me now,
Sure.
but that there's sort of 2 burdens you could have that would make this difficult. One would be what your situation was, of just like, and I don't know the particulars of yours, but in this kind of direction where I know people who don't have to worry about money, and that's actually a burden, to just, because you're disconnected from a society, and basically you're not getting feedback from society that certain actions you're taking is valuable, and money provides that in a certain way. It's like a form of feedback that something you're doing is valuable. That's not the only way to get that feedback, but it's a societally established way to do so. And if you just don't need that feedback, then if you're not dependent on money, then you have to find that feedback elsewhere, and it may or may not come, and that's hard. I've seen people struggle with that. on the other hand, there's the kind where you don't have any money, or you have debt, or as you say, you have two kids, or a family, or a house, or a mortgage, or a car. I think I really threaded that needle of just in the circumstances of my own life of I graduated without debt. I lived a really simple life. I was training in a monastery for 5 years, and I didn't have debt. I didn't have that high expenses. They gave me a very small stipend each month to like buy clothes or food if I needed something, and I made that work. And legally, I've been self-employed since 2013 or 2014. I briefly held like a real job in 2014, but even then I was like contracting for like 2 months, and I was like, oh, I hate this. So I stopped doing that and joined a monastery. But I did receive an inheritance in 2017 for a bit of money that kind of, as I say, I left the monastery for a year, and that was basically what made it possible for me to live for a year and take online courses, as I said, and things like that. But for most of my adult life, I have not had a salary. I have not had, and actually having assets is different than having oncoming incoming money. And my current bank account, I think I have like, depends how you count, but like, I don't know, something like $8,000 in assets right now, US dollars. And it's like, that's fine for me. I don't have a house. I don't pay rent. I don't own a car. I currently actually have access to a car, but I do not own a car. Like my expenses are very low. My projects that I run, I need like Zoom, my website, and there's other like some software subscriptions I pay for, but basically there's very low overhead to the kinds of projects that I do. When they are bigger projects, there's several projects that I've run that are kind of bigger. I structure them so that they're self-funding. Either there's some that I do commercially or on a generosity basis, such that like basically money comes in. And so I have a Patreon that brings in right now about $900 a month, and people sometimes make one-time donations to me, some of which have been pretty large. I've been very grateful for that, but even small donations help. And yeah, basically I try to operate as much of my life as possible on a generosity basis, and that works for two reasons. One is that I have a simple life. I don't do ludicrously expensive things for my own benefit. I don't have a house. I don't have a car. I don't have kids. That's a lifestyle choice. There are going to be people who want kids. That's a different ball game. I've been clear. I don't want kids. So that's just a different situation. I make it work through staying with different people who put me up, so I don't have to pay rent. And I really love that way of life. I get to see people deeply in their life, and they get to see me deeply, and a really beautiful exchange happens there. And then, of course, on the other reason that works is that I'm giving my time and my energy and my life to being of service, and people see that. They see that I'm doing service projects that they believe in, that they think are benefits to the world, and I have a track record. I mean, even before I left the monastery, I was running my blog for several years and making lots of posts that people found valuable and posting on the internet and stuff. And people can see that, and they see that it's a benefit and of service, and they want to support something like that. So between living a simple life and dedicating my time and energy to be of service, that lets me operate on a generosity basis. And so far, so good. I've made it work that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just to clarify, I didn't want to interrupt you, but did you say 628 or 68? I think you said
I have how much money I have right now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like $6,000 US dollars. Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or 6 or 8,000. I don't have it off the top of my head, but in that ballpark.
Yeah. Okay. No, just if people think about this like I do, they would probably want to know, like, is it 6 to 8 or is it 68? There was a audio,
yes. A range between 6 and 8 rather than 68.
Got it. There's a difference. Hey, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Comes out with a lot of heart and hits me with a lot of inspiration. Reminds me of one of the concepts that I kind of like to work around, which I call size of life, which you can choose, I postulate. And that is a decent belief to have, I think, and you're choosing what's the word, a small a life of enough, a very important. You can live bigly too, but then you need to make sure you fund it, and you need to know what's enough, because growing infinitely, that's not really a life. That's a common misconception in the world, I think.
I yeah, hearing you say that, I just want to say, like, I feel like on certain metrics, I live a very sort of simple, small life. I
Mm.
mean that um, and on other metrics, I just the qualitative experience of my life is that I'm rich and blessed. It's like
Oh
I
yeah.
feel just like such a beautiful life that I'm so grateful for, and like I get to travel all the time and go to all different places, and I have so many friends all over the world, and I love the work that I do, and I like every day I just feel I feel so blessed to be doing what I'm doing, and not like there's alternate universes where I'm like working some corporate job or something, and I'm just hating myself and hating my life, and I would hate that. If I had a traditional job in any shape or size, I would be miserable, and I know that about myself, and I just love what I do and how I spend my time and where I get to do it, and there's so many things that are absolutely blessed in my life that like I don't feel qualitatively hampered by having a small amount of fiscal money in the conventional
Oh yeah.
currency, you know?
Oh yeah, I know. It's very obvious. It's very obvious, Tashin. You're beaming, and it's very obvious that you're filthy rich on a spiritual plane. Disgusting, bro. Disgustingly
Well,
rich.
may it be so for all, as I would wish it for all.
Yes, me
Yeah.
too. Me too. No, that's really what it's about, because it's well, it's choose your own adventure. I mean, it's funny. Anansi at this point would disagree. We had the last conversation. He says, "No, I don't choose anymore. Right? It's now only
Mm.
what's being lived through me." Which is, I get him. I get it. Technicality. It comes down to the same important technicality, but no,
Hmm.
just kind of joshing. But it's I really love the choice. I love that you can say, no, no, I would hate having a job, so I don't have one. And I really value, and I want to do this much more. Also, when I'm in public talking to somebody, to make things clear like you just did. I think it's so valuable, right? It's like, this is how I did that, and this is how I lived that. And yeah, I've got a blessing here, and hampering there, and you're not, of course, not everything is always blossoms and roses, and life is always difficult, but you're making choices because you're devoted, right? I mean, you're devoted to yourself insofar as that you're saying very abundantly clearly that you can't just have a job. That's not what you want. Like, that's not gonna happen. Not Tasshin, right? Not me. Um,
Well, that comes back to like I think
mhm.
I one of the things that breaks down about the glasses metaphor is you're not actually looking for it outside of yourself. It's really like who are you? You
Yeah,
know, who are you? And sort of finding yourself or seeing yourself in the mirror. This is who I am, and that there's a certain shape of a person that you are, and a relationship that that shape has with the universe. And so when I say I don't want a job, for example, it's like, of course, in sort of a conventional sense, I would not like having a job. And more importantly, in a kind of cosmic sense almost, that's just not what this being is meant to do. In the same way that, a tree is not going to maintain a website, like you and I might have websites, but like a tree is a beautiful being. I'm looking at one right now. I love trees so much, and it's a beautiful being that's radiant in its presence in the world and alive and doing the thing that it needs to do, and it's really a person. I see trees as friends, and that have a being and that are worthy of love and respect, and uh, it has a proper shape. Like it has a shape in the world of what it wants to be, and it has grown into that, and um, it is not fitting for a Tasshin person to have a corporate job, or there's any number of other things, and the way that that internally is this kind of like, oh hell no feeling. You have to trust that, and similarly, whatever is a hell yes for you, of like, oh yeah, I definitely want to do that. And um, I think I didn't listen to. I'm looking forward to listening to your conversation with Anansi, and I don't know what he said about it, but I think those are almost just different views of the same thing, or from the different
yeah,
vantage point of like what's chosen for you versus who you are, and it all works out to the same thing.
No, it's precisely that. It's precisely that. It's like you say, I'm a Tasshin person, and that person should not have that corporate job. That's pretty much what Anansi means with I'm not choosing.
Hmm.
I've recognized something in me that takes a certain shape, as you say, and that's not happening. It's so sweet that you mentioned the tree. I guess you know it a little bit because I handed in
Oh yes.
the tree manifesto to your writing contest. But I love trees, and um, ever since a very groundbreaking LSD trip, I had a very strong metaphor that's never left me. That life as a tree, and I mean,
Mm.
I'm not the first poet to come up with that shit, but it's like for me that's really important. So I actually have to disagree with you on one part, which is that a tree might have a website. It might because it might be me, me the tree.
Yeah. Fair. Fair.
Yeah, yeah. Trees, man. Do you want to talk about trees for a moment?
Oh, I would love that.
Okay. What do you like about them?
Well, my tree story wasn't acid, but I have certainly had profound experiences with that. But in 2020, I did a long solitary retreat in Vermont at the monastery, and it was in the woods of Vermont, which are beautiful. Uh, in my opinion, Vermont is one of the most beautiful places in America that I've been to, anyway. And anyway, I was there in the winter and living in a cabin, and my phenomenological experience of trees changed during that time. And at the beginning, this is sort of reverse engineering it, but it was something like, trees are material and they are objects and they are colors and they are shapes, and they're not a living thing. They're just a physical object, and that's it. And um, through the process of living in nature, living outside, being outside every day, quieting my mind through meditation, living a simple life. I wasn't on the internet during that time. I talked to my teacher most days during that, but other than that, wasn't really talking to people. And it was all about the Dharma, spiritual practice. Living that way for weeks robbed me of that perspective, and I could not help but see the trees and the plants and the animals and the earth and the sky as also beings, also friends. In the same way, I see you. We and I are just getting to know each other, but I see you. It's obvious to me. You are a person. You are alive. You are worthy of love and respect. You have your whole life that is worth learning about and worth respecting on your own terms. You have needs and boundaries, and like there's a whole suite of affordances that we import automatically into our human relationships, like that. We're like, at least a decent person would. Not everyone does, but it's like, oh, you're worthy of love and respect. I will try my best to be kind to you, to treat you the way you want to be treated. You might be better or worse than that. You might stub somebody's toe, but like, there's that intention when you meet someone. Like,
And it's,
I'm
by
not
the
gonna
way,
just.
really sweet to just hear this, even though you're like saying it as a reference. I was like, wow, this is like, thank you, Tashin. That's right. And there's a good bit of meta coming over here, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's just as an aside, and it's working quite nicely. Thank you for that. I appreciate your recognition. Just wanted to say that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's I see it. I see it in you as well, but I think you already said it very well. And
Mm.
yeah, wow, so just came at me. Sorry, please continue.
No problem. I mean, ideally, that's how people feel about each other,
Yeah,
and it's not easy, but we understand that as humans. Like people are worth, if you people get that, but then we don't extend that to the natural world, to trees and
right.
plants and animals, and we see them as materials and resources and objects and physical matter. And another way to put this would be something like materialism was robbed from me. I was like, there is not just physical matter. There is not just object. There is only subject. There is only personhood. There's only being.
Mm.
And therefore, it is worthy of the same love and respect that I offer you. Or if I see someone on the street, I'm just passing by, I'm going to try to be kind to them and not hurt them. So too, trees and plants and animals deserve that same love and respect. And I felt them phenomenologically as people. That shifted for me. So now when I see a tree, it's clear that's a person over there. That is a person. They are not a human. They are not Homo sapiens. They do not have various capacities that Homo sapiens have, but they have different capacities that trees have, and plants have, and animals have. And they are persons in any case that are worthy of love and respect and kindness. And that's a fundamentally different orientation than the object person, the object physical object material orientation. And you live your whole life differently if you see things that way. It's not easy. I'm still learning how to. I mean, we as a species have not figured out how to dance fluidly with the planet. I don't think I'm. I know people who are living a better life in this respect, but just seeing things, the state of affairs of the universe that way shifts things for you. And often when I feel into this, it's not really present in this moment, but often there's a lot of grief because I see how much suffering we're causing the planet and our friends on this planet that are not humans, and how much of a big backlog of suffering there is to look at, and how widespread it is. And what really hurts me, one of the things that really hurts me is to see people, to witness people perceiving plants and animals and nature as physical objects that are, not worthy of love and respect. I remember, for example, I was staying at someone's house a while ago and they had a dog, and I really treat dogs as people in a certain way. Like I talk to dogs and cats and plants and things. It's like,
of course, bro. Of course.
Of course, yeah. Well, and this was, I'm glad you see it that way, but my host did not see it that way, and so I'd be like, oh, hello, I'm just gonna go out now to the dog. I'd be like, I'm just gonna go out, but I'll be back later. See you later, friend. And the host would be, I could see them just, they couldn't register what they're like. Something weird is happening. What is happening? He's talking to the dog. I don't understand. And it just couldn't integrate not only the activity, but even more importantly, that way of seeing that I was treating the animals as worthy of love and respect as people. They're like, oh, I've just been treating this as fur, like this is just moving fur. That's what this is. Like, that's a totally different orientation.
Yeah, totally. So funny. Reminds me of a bit of a. There are some people who get like dog training the wrong way, and they think the proper way to talk to a dog is through like power and dominance. And then they're in their like repository of video game dialogue options. They only have like commands, and like kind of a value system of that ranks around obedience. Oh my god, fucks with my head.
Yeah. Either they're doing what I want or they're not. That's it.
Yeah, and that's either good or bad.
That's right.
Come here. Come here.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Oof.
Bad.
It's funny to say it, but in the moment, it really tends to bring up a lot of grief for me.
Yeah, for me too.
It's like, because just in the same way, if you imagine, right? Like, say you and I were in Berlin together and we're hanging out and we're at a park or something, and somebody walked by and started talking to you, and then, you and I are in a park and we're hanging out, and they're like, Simon, you asshole, you piece of shit, why did you do this thing? I'd be like, hey, settle down. Like, why are you talking to my friend that way? Like, back off. Like, we don't do that here on this planet.
Yeah, we don't do that here in this house on this planet. Yeah.
And it's like the same kind of thing is happening constantly with plants and animals and the earth itself, of just fundamental disrespect.
Interesting. Disrespect, yeah. Disrespect, disregard.
Mm-hmm. And blind disrespect, because people are blind, because it doesn't make sense if you just see it as objects. It's like, oh, the dog, fur, trees, whatever. It's just like, cut it down. It doesn't care. It doesn't matter. What I do does not matter.
And I'm feeling this thing here about that I'm kind of curious about. I'm a bit afraid of it too if I feel into it. Like asking, I ate something before we recorded. And today I was like, I need some meat today. And so I ate, and like I told you also, I kind of got into your realm a little bit to get in tune with you before we talked. And so I was like did my little prayer before eating, and then I was also like, much love to you, little cow. I hope you lived very well. Kind of the classic thing you're supposed to do when eating, an animal, which is like give respect to the. And I certainly don't always do that when I eat meat. But to talk about being about to talk to you, I was like, yes, love and respect to all beings. Okay, I better do the thing. So it's already entering me, which I don't mind a lot of Tasshin spirit entering me. So that's nice. And I want to say, and I want to see if you see it that way. I kind of see it that way. I'm a man of place a little bit. I am also a wanderer, but I'm also a homie, somebody who's at home, and so come from a bit of a farmer thing. So I like all this nature, tree. I've got this village thing, like these analogies, and I've somehow come to terms with the fact that this being eats meat, at least for the time being, right? And this being has some things that are made of wood and stuff, and that's pretty normal, I think. And so, well, let me ask it to you. I think you can probably say it better than me. How would I reconcile that with also having love for all trees and all animals? How can I, own a bookshelf made out of wood, and how can I eat meat here and there? Is that possible while also loving these beings?
Well, I think that everyone has to wrestle with these questions for themselves. I think it would be inappropriate for me or anyone else to tell you what you should do. I can only tell you how I see it and then let that affect you, as has already happened,
Sure.
To me, I used to really want to find the right answer to how to live and to various ethical questions. So then it would be inarguable, and no one could yell at me, and I would just be good and not bad. I was a vegan for a long time, and then I stopped being a vegan. But that was because I wanted to be the right answer, live the right answer. And I think there isn't one. And you have to find that for yourself. And for me, right now, at this time, the right answer is vegetarianism. I don't eat meat. But I wouldn't judge someone for eating meat. That's their choice. And I think one of the things that was robbed of me in that period was not only the belief that there was a right answer, but also that there's no purity. There was some desire for like purity, and that's not really quite the right word, but being immaculate or something. And there is just death, like there is suffering. Food itself, to eat, to be alive, necessitates death. Death to maintain life that will one day die, and you can't escape that. That's in all food, whether it's omnivorous or vegetarian or vegan. It's like things died to make food so that you could live, and you can't escape that. And everyone will die. Death is part of the universe. Looking at that has been a source of great grief and wisdom for me. And I think I don't know, I love what you did very recently of I will eat meat and I will send love and respect to the animal that died so that I might eat. I think fundamentally it's important to eat with that knowledge and with that love and respect, and it's not there is death in everything we eat, whatever we eat. And so just to come to terms with that and feel with that, not avoid it, not ignore it. I do think that there's pragmatically, situationally, culturally, it behooves us to look at the systems that bring us food. I think if I were to choose to eat meat for myself, for example, I would try to eat meat that was, animals that were treated well and that I could kind of verify that they'd been treated well. Maybe things that were like local or whatnot. I don't know too much about that, but I try to do that. Since I started eating eggs, I try to eat eggs that are, not in cages and whatnot. It's a little bit hard to know for sure, but some things are like branded that way, and I hope and trust that they actually are eggs that were from chickens that were treated with a bit more love and respect. But just really looking at those systems is something that I think we are there's some duty or obligation to do, and just sit with that and not ignore it, and not blame ourselves for it. I don't think blame or shame or anger or hatred are the answers. Love is the answer, you know. So, and that includes ourselves and others. So, how can you eat? I think it's an ongoing question. How can you eat or really live from a place of love and respect for both self and others? And there isn't a formulaic answer to that, and it's inappropriate for anyone to tell someone else what the answer to that is. We can talk about what we value and what we care about and how we want to live, and then to try to live up to that in our own circumstances. So that's what comes to mind hearing you talk about that, and I'll be curious to see how you sit with it.
It's wonderful. I really very, very much appreciate the nuance in it. I think that's what we need. And for the rest, I will sit with it. Yeah, I will. I mean, I'm feeling also relatively like I don't have like, it's not an area of investigation for me at the moment. At least it wasn't until today, right? We never know. I've investigated it for a while, and then I like come to terms, and I was like, okay, let's not think about that for now. But who knows? Who knows which butterfly wings cause a storm? So yeah, let's see about that. Great. I'm reading and enjoying your Twitter a lot, of course, and you are very much there. And I can see you're pushing boundaries on stuff, right? You are in parts developed, in parts a cocoon. And I, as a podcast kind of like vulnerability posting exercise, I thought I can kind of see, I think, what boundaries you're pushing. I was wondering if you'd be down to talk a little bit about that, because I think I'm pushing similar ones, and yeah, I would just love to hear you talk about it.
Sure.
And so,
what's your sense of what? I imagine by boundaries you mean like comfort zone or something like that.
Yeah.
What's your sense of the territories that you see from the outside? I'm pushing my comfort zone in.
Exactly. I'll do my little interpretation, and then you can tell me more about it. So what I see, as you said, love is the answer, right? And I can see you like flirty posting, you know? That's one thing. I've seen you post many drafts, which also contain like a more abrasive side of you. And then there is kind of format posting that I see you do, which is like you have this little beautiful women art thing, which ties into the flirty posting, which is like a cool intersection of like you drawing, flirting, and poetry, I think, or like writing. There are these literal layers of the images. Been really enjoying them, right? That's like and then it's a format, and it's like, oh, what, you know, and you're like, for mature audience, and I'm like, I'm gonna click that. And then I see some nice titties drawn by Tasshin, and it's like, nice, you know, that's like,
We love them.
yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've seen you like redo a couple of just like tweet formats that you like kind of memify, which I've been enjoying a lot, because you know what? The kids love repetition, you know? Memes are just the best. Anything that memes or repeats or rhymes is just, you know, our little brains like that shit. So been enjoying all of that, but I'm mostly interested in kind of, which I think is a lot there around us, which is kind of like a lot of honesty around, you know, sexuality and flirtiness, horniness, whatever. I can see you're moving that. Is that an apt interpretation of what you're doing?
And it's interesting to hear that reflected.
Feel seen?
Yeah, well, yeah, certainly, yeah. I think you're picking up on a lot of trends for sure, and it's nice to hear that reflected. I think I think of my Twitter presence and really my internet presence and really my life in general as playing a lot of games in parallel. And on Twitter, there's, I don't know how many, but 20, 30, 40 games that I'm playing in parallel. Like I've lost track, but I just know that I'm playing them. And sometimes I find a new game and then I start playing that one. And um, there's different rules to each of the games and kind of aims or goals. And Twitter's great because you can kind of just play all of them. And uh, I like that about Twitter. I mean, I think some people might prefer, oh, I'd only see, like one of the games, for example, that I play is like posting meta phrases. And maybe someone would want to follow my account just to see some nice meta phrases that are unusual and really hit the heart. And I could understand that. But I kind of, I mean, as I said earlier, I think I just want to be a whole person. And there's a lot of aspects of my soul and personality and form of expression, and I'm going to play all of them, and people can either come along or not. And I think you know yeah, I think the sexuality stuff feels pretty integrated at this point, as really the dark, what I internally call my dark voice, feels pretty integrated. It's both of those. The challenge has been partly just to share that, but I feel pretty comfortable doing that at this point. Something that I'm actually that's underneath the art that you're talking about of beautiful women is, I think, not obvious, but is like, of course, part of it is rendering beautiful women. I find women beautiful. Um, that's part of it, but there's actually a specific, almost I would say like an inquiry question that I've been sitting with about my life and relationships and the universe. That's like, I could put it into words, but it's a very much an embodied question, and something I'm wrestling with in my heart. And that's where I'm making art from, is from that question and that feeling and that confusion. And it seems to be best manifest as erotic art at this time, where like I pick a drawing to picture to draw, and then I draw it, and then I write the text. And I think the text often has I haven't shared them in all cases. I kind of like eliding some of it in the thing, so it's kind of mysterious, but the text almost invariably has some kind of allusion to that inquiry and that question, and I just start writing from there. And the words are often sort of bittersweet and sad, or melancholy, and not it's not just like cleanly, like joyful or erotic or sexual or something. It's like it's really, for me, is about that question, and then it seems to manifest in this very particular form. But that's not so much as comfort zone, I'd say, as like an active area of exploration, is that question. And um, I think there are things that I'm doing that's pushing my comfort zone, but what is it? I don't know. Yeah, a lot of those things are like kind of more about experimenting and playing for me, and I do like experimenting with, what you might call snow clones, or like phrasal memes. I think not only existing ones that have been going around, but I don't see a lot of people that know this, but you can kind of make your own phrasal memes, or turn anything into a phrasal meme and just riff on it. And that's actually more fun for me, as either like inventing new things to riff on, or like adapting ones that haven't been done before. There's a few ones that I've invented for myself, and I know it would be really cool if one day, like, I made a phrasal meme that started going around. I think that ideally one that was like beneficent and kind, not like a lot of the ones that are kind of mean or snarky or
Yeah,
something. And
yeah.
I wouldn't really be as that would be a loss for me if I invented a
Well,
snarky phrasal template. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of a fun game for me. So there are ways that I'm pushing my comfort zones. I'm not quite sure that the sexuality, or what I would call my
okay.
darkness, are quite there right now, though.
Okay. Well, that's cool. No, I was just there. It had a in the way I like. I remember accounts pretty well. I've had this. I don't know. Always had this. I think maybe it comes from like the time at Twitch, where I was following a lot of creators, and it was kind of my job, and I could map out the landscape pretty well. and I would just see things in passing, but then I would see them and I would say like, oh, your last video was great. And it's like a great, like kind of Dale Carnegie-ian kind of like say somebody's name type of thing to, well, it's just nice for people. It's just love, you know, and it's genuine. And yeah, you know, I guess, yeah, it's curious for me, you know, like I'll be getting to know more people that that I don't know, but whose timeline I know. So it's a really interesting thing. And so I just kind of, I literally follow you, right? So I can kind of see your thing. And so that was my guess. I had a feeling you changed, and you confirmed that you changed from like a more tame Tasshin to a more edgy Tasshin. But then you're saying you've been pushing that comfort zone, let's say internally, and you've brought it outside as a more whole thing. That's then my question would be, are you sure? Because usually the shadow, the dark voice, is it ever fully integrated? Is it ever, you know? I mean, not to. I mean, I don't want to be mean about it. I'm just as a. I feel like I'm obligated to make that note when you say, "Oh, I feel my dark voice pretty well integrated." I would say like, "Oh, that's when it gets ya." No, I don't know.
Yeah. I think with both of those things, they're like recurring themes, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was more integration to do in the future. But there's things that used to be very hard for me that I just do not find hard anymore, and I have kind of an understanding of myself in a way that I didn't before, and a comfort with it, and it's almost like, I think this is a theme in general of it becomes possible when you're on a path of self-exploration to almost have a sense of what the destination is or what it would be like to arrive there. And you might not be there yet. You might not know what it looks like, but there's a sense like, oh, I got there. There's somewhere I was trying to go, and then I got there. And that's kind of the feeling I have with both of those things. Like they're like, even if you talk to me certainly a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, the dark voice felt very not integrated, and it was very confusing to me how to integrate that. And I feel very clear about it at this time, and in a way that I sensed was possible, and it feels like I've arrived there. And
can you say what, sorry to interrupt, can you say what your dark voice is maybe? I think that's very interesting line of exploration.
Yeah. I mean, I started doing parts work at various points, but you know, kind of in anger in late 2020, I suppose, and early 2021, and have done a lot of it. And I guess the earliest I did it was like 2018. Actually, Michael Kersey was the very first person that did parts work with me. I didn't really know what it was called then, but anyway, this is a part of myself that I call my dark part. I don't know. Other people don't like it when I call it that, but that's what I call it. And
me and the homies usually call it the shadow or a shadow. I don't know if it's the same thing, but I'm curious. Yeah,
it was in my shadow. I think to me, a shadow is like anything that's in your blind spot that you haven't fully integrated. And because I'm aware and connected to this, it doesn't feel like it's in my shadow anymore. And
interesting.
And also, I've made it. I'm not an enemy with it anymore. So it's like it and I we're good internally, and I've seen its value and its wisdom, and really listened to it in very specific situations. But yeah, it basically tends to manifest as thoughts that are more critical or judgmental or even mean or harsh than I tend to like to express as like my whole self, and often has a very sharp edge to it, and more critical or you know, bordering on those things. And as a whole person, I really value the practice of Buddhist right speech, which is to speak or say or write or think things that are true, useful, kind words from a kind state of mind, and also timely, or I would say context aware. And so as a whole person, I don't want to say mean things, because either from a state of mind or the words, but this often basically says things that are useful in a mean way. And I've learned how to, basically, if I don't listen to it, it tends to be much more aggressive and much more mean and like sharp. But if I do listen to it, it says things that are just like true, and it might be uncomfortable, but it's like, yep, that's how it is. And you really said it there, Bud. And So I at least internally I really listen to it when it has to speak up, and then there are certain kinds of decisions that I sort of will let it make because it usually has my best interest in mind, and then sometimes it's a kindness to share the words that it specifically says with other people. I do that on main sometimes now when it seems skillful to do so, and then I have an alt account, which is not that hard to figure out, but I don't want to be on public record what it is that says things that are from that voice specifically. It used to be an account that I just had as like an anonymous account that I didn't want to be associated with my name, and then a friend of mine figured out that it was me, and I was like, oh shit. And then after that point, it kind of transformed into being this venue for me to express my dark voice, and it tends to talk about topics that are a lot darker than the things I tend to talk about on main, like death and suffering and grief and heartbreak and pain and loss, but also from a kind of more acerbic voice. And it has, in fact, even in the last few days, it started saying things that were just like a whole new level of intensity, which I was like, oh, wow. It was almost like, the way I've conceived of it actually is I spent a lot of last year integrating this darkness into the rest of myself, and the parts that are sort of more kind and loving and wise and so on. And then it was almost like a backflow happened of the wisdom and love got reintegrated into the darkness, and now the darkness is saying things that are like much more wise, and it's like, oh wow, that's intense, but also more intense. And I was like, a specific change that's happened. And I don't know, I imagine for a certain kind of person it would be a fun project to figure out what the account this is, and if you do figure it out, I'd request that you keep it secret. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that, and I do feel like at a point of kind of integration with it, where it's like I can hear it when it comes up, and I listen to it, and if I need to, I act on its wisdom, and then I choose how to speak outside of myself, what to say in a way that is skillful with the rest of myself and my whole being.
That's amazing how you describe that. I really enjoy that. The don't listen to it, which is kind of problematic, to listen to it and kind of transmute it, if I got you right, or like channel it through that other account to somehow let it feed on the light voice wisdom so that it becomes even more intense and truthful pipeline. Is like, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, sometimes it's useful to say the thing that it says. It often is, but sometimes it's just like extremely harsh, and it would be unkind and unskillful to say something from it. So I don't in those cases. And
are you willing to share something that it says, let's say, from this realm that you mentioned that came up recently? Oh, really, only if you want to. I can really sense your sensitivity, like. Not sensitivity, kind of like, yeah, you're sensitive around it. You want to be kind and smart about it. So,
well, I don't want to share one from the other account because then it would be fine. But I can share something that, like, I know comes from the same voice, but that I've shared on main. So, just for some background, I had a death in the family recently. My mother died just a few weeks ago, actually, and a couple weeks ago. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm doing okay. She'd had cancer for 3 years, and I kind of knew it was coming. But that's actually what a lot of this has been wrestling with, is just like my mom dying,
wow,
and death,
yes.
and things like that, and really reflecting on death and grief and heartbreak and loss and these things. And anyway, this is a tweet that came from. I experience it internally as coming in part from my dark voice and sort of being integrated with the rest of myself, and so there's darkness in it and wisdom and light. And so this is the people that we lose in our life through death or other circumstances are intermittent reminders that life is precious, not to be taken for granted, a gift we should honor by living fully for ourselves and in service to others. So there's nothing mean in there, but it talks about death and is really coming from a place of grief and pain and loss, and yet there's wisdom there, and it was skillful to share that publicly. And yeah, I think I think this whole process has made me wiser and more in touch with different aspects of myself. And in particular, I'm giving my life to being of service and to doing things that benefit people. And that's important to me. It's my life's work. And I want that to be taken seriously and like put it on a good footing. And my experience is if there are aspects of yourself that you are, that are in your shadow that you are not looking at, that you have not integrated, then there are people who are going to see that in you and bounce off of you, because they're like, oh, I can't trust this because this person has this thing that they haven't looked at. And we all have this. So that means by necessity, there are some people who are going to bounce off what I do, and that's fine. But I do want to do my best to really integrate each aspect of myself to try my best. And sexuality has certainly been a part of that. This darkness has been a part of that. There are other things that I've worked to integrate. And I think when I reveal, for example, that I'm a sexual being, it makes people take what I say more seriously. Or if I reveal that I have also suffered or felt grief or loss, it takes people take me so seriously. Or, these kinds of things. Or, I had a tweet recently that was just like, hey, I'm feeling really sad today. And I don't often say something like that publicly, but one, it was true. And I wanted my friends to know, but also, I think it's a kindness to reveal, like, hey, I post a lot of stuff that's about happiness and love and kindness and joy and play, and that's good. I like doing that. And it does not mean that you are not subject to sadness or grief or loss, or that you're not a sexual person, or, that these other aspects of life are not present. Those are all present in my life. I'm not just like purely happy all of the time. In fact, I'm feel most things, most days, sad and angry and afraid and whatever. But I also feel happy and I feel love for others. And it's possible to cultivate all that. So it's felt important to me to show those aspects of myself to people in a skillful way, so that they know I am also human, and I don't want to I don't know, go into any kind of dynamics where people are projecting stuff onto me of like, oh, he's got it all figured out, or I don't know what, but yeah.
You're very right about that, and I'm really glad we talk about this, and it's very important to me personally as well because, um, well, I with very much respect, I'm very sorry, and I very much appreciated your honesty about your loss. I'm also very sorry about it. I mean that must be hard, and I hope you had I hope you had good chances to celebrate your mom's love and life very well. I don't know you very well, so this is definitely um, uh, a bit of a tightrope. But well, from a living, loving being to another, yeah. I hope you and your guys are very okay, the best you can be at such a monumental time.
Mm. Thank you. Yes, I'm doing okay, and I feel a little sad most days that she's gone. I miss her very much, and she meant the world to me, and she taught me a lot about love. She was really my first teacher about what love meant, and I can feel into that sadness now, and also there's a lot of peace and frankly a lot of wisdom that's come in this process, and um, sitting with that and learning from it has been a blessing, and many blessings have come into my life from this process. And so um, the grief that's present is a one that I experience is almost like a clean grief, where it's not messy for me. I am sad. I can feel that sadness now as we speak. I will miss her very much, but it's not. I've felt other griefs that are not clean, that are very messy. You mentioned about having a breakup, for example. It's like that kind of thing where it's like, oh, it tortures you at night and you lose sleep and you're confused, and that's a different kind of grief. And I'm not experiencing that with my mother as much as I loved her, as genuinely sad as I have been. It's very clean, and it helps that I knew it was coming, and also um, she and I both knew that we loved each other, and there was no lingering resentments or angers or grudges. I loved her and she loved me, and we were clear about that. And I'm just sad she's gone, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Bless you, brother. That's really great. That's yeah, that's really great. Yeah, and such is life, huh? Because
mm-hmm.
that is, like you said earlier, even life and death are part of a whole, and so is light and dark. And you said it very well. It's actually very very trustworthy uh, to show suffering. Um, I mean, the best songs and art in the world come from a place of deep suffering and sadness and loss and grief and confusion, and those are the songs we sing, because
Mm.
that's why we love people, artists that we've never met or we've never seen, but they've spoken to our hearts and our souls and our beings, and thus we know, and yeah. Mm. My friend Louis always says the wound, the vulneras, the is always an entry to to more, to the next level, or to another level, or to another understanding. And even if we have a bit that we're committed to, we um, to be well rounded, we have to share everything. I think, like not everything, but show the light and the dark, and that is in very much in the realm of skillful and the way you describe the way you would like to speak, skillful and context aware and true. I mean, yeah. And I'm also very conscious of the gravity of the topic. And yeah, if you would like to say any more about that, I'm very much here to hold that, as far as that's something you feel.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, I've been writing a lot about it, and I suspect I'll share more in the future about it. I think,
Of
even
course.
just to acknowledge publicly that my mother passed away. This is, I think, the first time I've said that publicly since she
Mm-hmm.
passed, and she was a very, very private person. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, it feels good to share that, and I think there'll be more that I'll like to share in the future through
Mm.
writing and that sort of thing.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
What is this bringing up for you? It seems like this news has impacted you, if I'm not mistaken. I'd be curious to hear about that.
No, it's just such a death. I'm blessed that I've had only two deaths in my family. My great grandma in 2001, years ago, and my grandpa on my dad's side in 2018. So I'm just feeling the weight of it, really, and
Mm.
it feels and I feel respect and love and um, a lot of consciousness around this being a recorded conversation, we meeting for the first time, you sharing this with me. I just felt um, um, I just felt silence, because
Mm.
it's it's just heavy. I can see the way you describe it. I can see this cleanliness, like you said, this love, that beauty, Mm. And it just seems a bit, it's a private thing, you know, it's personal, it's sad, it's many things that are to be respected, and anything but silence, or like any like, okay, on to the next topic, just feels a bit
Sure.
unseemly, right? So
Yeah.
I just feel like, okay, it's in the room. Well, it probably was before. It's with you. You're bringing that with you. Well, that demands space, you know, space in the little moment. And I can feel you across the sea and the internet. I'm just, yeah, that's one part of it. I'm a bit I was very sad today too. I've been grieving today. A wholly different thing, of course. More something. I've been grieving. That's maybe also why I asked you about love, which kind of closes the circle of conversation a bit. I was grieving. I've been realizing something about love, and how I am with love and sexuality, and romanticism. It's terrible. No ism in romantic, so we can't say romanticism. And being a romantic, let's say, that something along the lines of, wow, there's really a part of me dying, and something more truthful coming forth. And for me, it has to do with, you know, love in my childhood, very much to do with my mother, actually, and kind of feeling like, ooh, do you know these, and you know parts work. So I don't know parts work that well, but sometimes time stops for certain parts, right? And so I've just been feeling this, that the love and relationship part of me is very small. Like, it's always something, it's very strong in me. It's a big part of me, but it's very small. It's a bit left behind. And I've had love and I've had relationships, but somehow in like that I don't know, well, it sounds a bit harsh, but that fake part that grew with my regular age, kind of went with that. And I felt so much grief today for realizing that part of me is like 3 or 4 and I need to like carry it along now or something, and like really pay attention to that. And it's like, it's yeah, difficult, but very freeing to admit. And I think I admitted it for the first time today. And apparently today is like it's like a lunar eclipse or something. So apparently it's a portal for rebirth or something. So I guess our topics here are pretty apt now.
Yes.
So I guess that's aside. So it brought up 2 things for me, that, and then of course the respect and the space for your loss and grief as well.
Well, grief, as best I can tell, loves company. I think it's I always really appreciate hearing what people have on their heart and what's in their life, and there's no grief that's small, you know. And something that's also just so clear to me is how much really feeling and honoring what is present on the heart, whether it's grief or rage or fear or joy, opens up the whole territory of the heart. And you can't feel love or peace or joy or purpose without also feeling the grief and acknowledging the grief or the confusion or the pain or the anger. And those all have to be accepted and loved. And that's just proved itself to be true again and again for me. And it's because I honor these things in myself and others that it is possible to have love for myself and others, and to feel this deep love for myself and others, or to recognize that this tree is a friend. It's like uh, you have to have all of that or none of it.
Word up. Word up. Yeah. And I'm really grateful that, we're in a community or have both entered and made and been given a world, very much talking about TPOT and Jason's as well, where that's valued. There are so many parts of the world where that isn't valued, and I think we're in such an unbelievable timeline that not even everybody is in, right? It feels like cutting edge for some reason. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Cutting edge, where a cutting edge group of fascists. A little fascist village that really loves people being themselves and having all their feelings heard.
Maybe I'll understand in time why people say that, but that has not been my experience. So the fascist part. Yeah.
Oh my God! Yes. No, of course not. A little beautiful village where that's just where that's encouraged, respected, desired, requested, assisted, furthered, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful. How can it be, Tasshin, that you are here and I am here, and we've never met in person, and we've only stumbled across text and audio snippets and one mutual friend or another, and here we are having this part of the conversation. To me, I could not be happier. I could not be more grateful. I mean, this is a real special one. Just a special scenario to be in. That's how I want to live life,
I completely agree. I think when you default to respect and kindness, so much becomes possible, and friends of friends are friends already.
Word up. For me, that's a beautiful note to end on.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a lovely conversation, and I so enjoyed speaking with you.
Same. Is there anything that you would like to say before we part ways? Say, ask, request, I don't know, whatever. Last words are yours.
I don't think so. Yeah, just thank you. And I think a conversation like this is itself a beautiful thing, and I hope that if someone chose to listen to it, that it touched their heart.
I hope so too. Thank you very much, and see you very soon.
Sounds good.
Nice.